Welcome to Voices of Resilience. Thank you for joining us today on your Saturday morning or your Saturday afternoon. I'm grateful you could be here. Um, Normally, if you've been in a meeting or an event with me before in Zoom, I like to do something called popcorn, where we make
Ugh.
sure everybody has voice. But there's so many people in the room. Instead, I'd like to invite you to type into the chat. Some of you have already done that. Your name, where you're physically located, and to answer the question of the day, which is a simple one. What did you eat for breakfast? Um, so if you can put that in the chat, what's your name? Where are you physically located today? And what did you eat for breakfast? And while we're at it, if you're not speaking, I'm going to invite you to go on mute so we don't have any background static. And gonna call out some of the things we're putting in the chat so we can get to know each other. I know we have people all across the country. We've got Natasha in Oregon. We've got Kathy in Cambridge eating toast or had toast. Cheryl in San Jose, cheese toast. Mary Beth in Iowa, granola. Judith in New Jersey, granola. Oh, Kai from Seattle, thank you for coming. Um, Back row bar. I guess my point here is you're putting in your name and where you're located and what you're eating or what you did eat. Just want to acknowledge your presence in the room, and wanted to feel like if we could, we're all at this virtual table having breakfast or lunch together. And I look forward to the day where that does happen. Thank you for joining us from across the country, WILPF members and friends of WILPF. Um, why are we here today? Voices of Resilience, how we rise, how we sustain. Thank you for being with us to support our organization, to come together in community to support each other, and to support Women's International League for Peace and Freedom's work. Some of you are new to WILPF. Some of you have been to WILPF for 50 years. So I'm going to give a very short overview of WILPF's history, because some of you know very well what WILPF is. But for those of you who are new, want to share that Women's International League for Peace and Freedom was created in 1915 by a group of amazing, fearless women to their goal was to stop World War I. So this is a group of women and allies that have been doing the work for 110 years. This is our 110-year anniversary. And we have been at the table. We were at the table when the UN was created. We have a permanent seat at the UN. We operate in 40 countries, everything from WILPF Palestine to WILPF Spain to WILPF United States. And here in the United States, we have 40 local branches. So, WILPF New York, WILPF Triangle branch in North Carolina, WILPF Fresno in California. And our roots are anti-war in terms of how we operate, disarmament. And today we've become a multi-issue organization around mobilizing around everything from, minimizing climate change and earth democracy to creating a more equitable economy. And in particular, in the moment we're in, focusing on some of the issues that are happening in the United States, pushing back against the harm that's happening right now. But we'll get into more of what we're doing later today. I'm going to be interviewing three pairs of amazing people that represent the many different sides and faces of WILPF. And why I'm interviewing them all today is, I've heard so many people say that in the moment we're in, whether you're in the United States or in other countries around the world, there's this real feeling of powerlessness, of helplessness. And the one thing I've learned from WILPF women is that they've told me time and again, the arc is long. And WILPF women have been through hard times, and their communities have been through hard times, and they've gotten through it. And we will get through this moment together. And today is about hearing from some of our trailblazing women in WILPF and friends about some of the things they've learned along the way that maybe we can learn that can lift us up in the moment we're in and help us keep moving forward together. And so with that said, I'm going to introduce our first pair of panelists, and we're going to do a bit of a fireside chat. where I'm going to ask them some questions. I am so excited to introduce to you um, Robin Lloyd and Jesse Guma. And as they join us, I'm going to tell you a little bit about their background. Robin Lloyd and Jesse Guma are the descendants of Lola Maverick Lloyd, who co-founded WILPF in 1915 with Jane Addams and other visionary women. And Robin is based in Vermont and is an activist extraordinaire, has been fighting the fight, pushing against inequity, against hard things in this world her whole life. And Jesse has grown up with activism in his blood. It's like just like we all breathe air. Jesse has grown up with activism in the air all around him. He has never known any other life. And so today I'm excited to share with you some of the things that Robin and Jesse have learned along the way, which I hope will help lift us all up in these times too. Um, Robin and Jesse, thank you so much for being here. I know, Robin, you're um, in Vermont, and Jesse is currently on a hill in a mountaintop where he's brought his daughter camping with 40 other young children. So thank you, Jesse, for hiding behind a tree to give us some of your time. This amazing mother-son duo. Robin, I'm going to start with you. As I already said, I know that your grandma, Lola Maverick Lloyd, helped found WILPF. I've also been told that you used to bring a bust, like a ceramic bust of Lola's head, everywhere you went. You brought it in a suitcase, you pulled it behind you, you pulled it out at events to, tell the story of WILPF. So tell us about Lola and the founding of WILPF, please.
hmm Okay, well, thank you. Welcome, everyone. It's wonderful we're all here today. Yeah, well, I mean, you have to get back into prior to World War One and the despair that women were feeling that this war had started. People didn't quite know why. Uh, when in 1915 already, thousands of people were killed on the battlefields of Europe. And what happened here, and my grandmother was really just a well-to-do mother of four children living in Winnetka, Illinois. And it was really the visit um, uh, of Rosika Schwimmer, who was a Hungarian who knew what really was going on there. She made a tour of the United States and galvanized my grandmother. The two of them later on went to New York, and it was Women's Peace Party, I think, was formed there, and then went to The Hague in the middle of the war, submarines everywhere, but they made it to The Hague and met with women from opposing sides. And then they went to speak to the leaders of the warring factions. Of course, they were all men, and they all said, "Ladies, just go home. We will handle this." And that was the war, and the response of those leaders were the galvanizing factors that led to um, the formation of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom.
Wow. I remember you telling me, imagine, Linda, these women taking these boats across these oceans, confronting these powerful men, the spirit that required. And is that Lola's bust behind you?
Of course, yes,
Yeah.
there she is.
Well, thank you, Lola, for joining us. Um, and
And also here, there she
uh,
is.
oh, thank you,
They,
Lola. Lola Maverick Lloyd.
yeah,
Well, she set such a legacy in motion um, with her family, with you, and with Jesse. Um, I want to sort of we took a little bit of a quick stroll in the past with you, and I want to bring us a little bit more forward in the timeline. And in doing that, I'm going to move to you, Jesse, ask you a quick question. Before I do that, um, Shelby, can you please throw up that picture that I shared with you of Robin and Jesse? Yeah. So here we are. This is Robin at a die-in. And there's little Jesse just hanging out on a normal day. I don't know what year this was, but for all of you in the room, I want you to know this is a very iconic photo. It's part of WILPF lore. It's part of lore in the activist world. Jesse, do you remember what's happening here? Can you tell me what was happening here? And equally important, can you tell me what was it like growing up with Robin, this extraordinary activist, and in the legacy of activists in your family line?
Sure, sure. So I think this is, if I had to guess looking at how old I am, I'm guessing it's 1981 or 1982.
Mhm.
And there was construction on our main street in Burlington, Vermont, on Church Street. They were rebuilding it. And so this is kind of right in Maine downtown, a lot of foot traffic in this area. And I think my mom chose a wonderful site to do this. I guess it's a die-in, Mom. Is that kind of what you would
Yeah,
call it?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, we are all Hibakusha. That's what the sign says. So this was done at the time of, the anniversary of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and
right.
Bernie Sanders had just been elected mayor of Burlington, and so he was open to our kind of perspective at that time. It
Yeah.
was wonderful.
And so I am here just watching my mom be dead. And I mean, she was committed. I'm guessing she was there for quite some time. And so, you know, I'm guessing I was really excited because one, I got a soda, which was not normal in our house. So that was
Yeah,
probably a little
that was forbidden by me. I don't know who gave him the soda.
um but this was like you kind of mentioned, just another day in the child of an activist life. I mean, I went to many meetings. As you all know, there are a lot of meetings involved in activism. So going to meetings, going to protests, doing this sort of thing was pretty normal for me. So this was not irregular. This was not something strange. I was probably more critiquing my mom's, form and how realistic it looked or something like that. But this was definitely not a strange thing for me.
And this was to protest nuclear war, right? And yeah.
I think,
Yes.
like my mom said, this was on the anniversary of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, so I think it was to shed light on that. And as I grew up, these sorts of things happened, all throughout my childhood. I was probably the only kid in high school this might have been right out, maybe in college, whose mom went to federal prison. So, she did for what, protesting School of the Americas, Mom? Was that what it was?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And you did, I think, 3 months hard time. And so again, that was not anything that was surprising to me or caught me off guard. So it's
And
pretty standard.
I remember a story you told me about when you said, "Mom, what do you want me to bring you in prison?" The one thing Robin wanted were felt tip pens.
Yeah, she had that request because she's a very avid journaling, and so I brought 3 pens in, and it was kind of the low security prison she was at in Danbury, Connecticut, but I hid them throughout the kind of meeting area and the bathroom. And Mom, I think you said one of them made it through. They found the other two, but one of them you were able to get.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did my part.
Yeah, way to fight the system. Thank you, Jesse. Well, Jesse, I have a two-part question for you.
Sure.
And Shelby, if we can remove the photos so we see, all three of us again in the big screen. I guess what was one of the biggest takeaways that as an adult now you look back that you took from this life of, this legacy of family activism? And what is the biggest thing on your mind right now in the world we live in today?
Uh, you know, being involved in all of this obviously allowed me to see the rest of the world. We can live pretty sheltered lives, I feel like, especially where we are in America and that sort of thing. And so, I mean, this really helped open my eyes to a lot of what was going on in the world, and also realize there's so much out there that I do not know and that I do not see, and injustices that are happening that I am unaware of. And it also, just as a child, when you're doing things you don't want to do, you're not playing and having fun and doing all that sort of stuff. It taught me patience. Was a big thing. It really taught me patience. Um, and so those are the two biggest things I would say. I mean, empathy, obviously, is the other one. And I think now the thing I'm most concerned about is probably climate change is my biggest concern and the thing I feel most passionate about. I have a 6-year-old daughter and a almost 4-year-old son, and thinking about the world they are inheriting is scary for me. And so to me, that is something I want to be active in. I will be active in. Um, Hopefully, making the world a better place for them.
Mhm. And you, as a filmmaker, you have talents to implement those concerns.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah.
And that is my profession. I work as a filmmaker in New York, and so I hope I can help open people's eyes maybe through that.
Yeah, powerful storytelling like today. That's what we're focused on. So Robin, hearing what Jesse said, everything he's learned from you and what's on his mind right now, what advice do you have for him or for any of us in this room?
Mhm. Well, I mean, he's a grown boy now. So he's on his own trajectory. He's married with 2 kids and has a house and a business. Um, and but I think he is, as he says, open to what's happening in the world, and just I think the education of our young people and our youth is so important to uh, so that they can take their role as adults. And there's so much going on. It's very difficult to sometimes get the truth out.
Yeah, getting the truth out. And, I mean, Wilf, I know we are bold speakers, and, one of our sort of signature elements of who we are, our very existence, is we speak the truth that we believe in. Um, and I think that's one of the big takeaways I've taken from all of you who have been talking with us. We prepare for today, and how to do that with community behind you, so it's less fearful to do that. And Jesse, I'm wondering, do you have any advice for your mom or for all of us in this room as we move forward in the times that we're in right now?
Uh, I mean, who am I to give advice to all these people who are so much more experienced than I am? But I think I can give some insight into where my head is at now, and I feel like a lot of people feel like we're living in some hard times and some dark days, and we are. And I my gut feeling is that the pendulum is just starting to head back in the right direction, and things hopefully will start to get better. So I am cautiously optimistic, and I hope people will also be cautiously optimistic.
Because we're starting to see headlines of the public sort of shifting their
Yes,
opinion on certain things, like what's
yes,
happening in Gaza,
yes.
voting, all these things. Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot of things. So I'm not even going to get into the details, but I just, in general, let's keep our heads up and let's be optimistic.
And let's do the work to get
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Robin and Jesse, thank you so much for giving us
Thank you.
your stories, sharing your stories. Jesse, I know you might have to go because you have 40 children waiting for you, and Robin, I know you're staying with us. Grateful for your time and looking forward to hearing more of the history that you've built and will continue to build with Wilton in your communities. And I'd love to invite Shelby to unpin you both. And I'm going to, as she does that, I'm going to introduce, provide a little bit of color on or background on our next two speakers that I'm going to interview, Betty Burke and Shelby Young. Oh my gosh, this amazing power duo. I will say right off the bat that every time I speak to Betty, I know you're going to get tired of me saying this, Betty. I feel like I'm speaking to the Buddha. Like every word you say drips with wisdom. So, okay, I don't mean to set you up. um, um, but just a little bit about Betty. Betty is in Massachusetts. Was a Peace Corps volunteer teacher in Ethiopia, was the former chair of WILPF US back in the 90s, worked for the Hague Appeal for Peace. And I'm just tipping, that's just the tipping point of so many amazing things, Betty, you've done in your community in this world to make it better. But that's a little bit about Betty. And Shelby, I mean, Shelby is this amazing human that I have the gift to work with every single day. Shelby is our field organizer at WILPF and is mobilizing our branches to do good things together, even more good things than they're already doing. Shelby comes to us as an activist in the democracy space, has done a lot of work mobilizing the Black vote, has done a lot of work in the LGBTQ plus rights space, and so many other things, and is with us from Arizona. So thank you both for joining us. I'm so grateful that you're here. Um, I'm going to shift the conversation a little bit here. Um, I happen to be with three of us pinned. We're all women of color, is existing in this world at a time, especially in this country, in the United States of America, where the words like diversity, equity, and inclusion are being rolled back. People are afraid to say these words. It was so inspiring a few years ago when there was it felt like such commitment. And now there's all this backtracking, which is, really heartbreaking. And I think that affects, everybody. I know it affects everybody. Any issue affects any single individual differently based on their lived experience, where they show up, the community that they live in. So I want to ask both of you, as women of color, have you had to show up differently in the peace building space or the activism space that you've been in or that you're in now? Who would like to go first?
I can start. I mean, so for me, absolutely. So I'm from Downingtown, Pennsylvania, and although I grew up in the what was originally the black segregated part of this city, which is called Johnsontown, I didn't really have anyone that looked like me or was black in my neighbor in my school, like where I went to school every day. I didn't really know like what my blackness looked like or how it reflected in the work that I do and the person that I am. So when I think about how I show up differently, a lot of my life I thought that like my blackness was less convenient for other people. Like I really wanted to make I really made myself feel smaller to make other people feel more comfortable, not acknowledging my blackness, not acknowledging my race or anything that intertwines with it. So when I think of how I've had to show up differently, sometimes I still not anymore, but I used to kind of be small too, like try to kind of like be a little bit smaller to make space for others. And I find myself too not talking like in any peace or activist space that I'm in, whether it's like access to healthcare, reproductive rights, I find myself or used to find myself maybe not acknowledging maybe the elephant of the room, which is how does it affect women of color differently? How does it affect me differently? It's still an issue, but how do we get to the nuance of it all? So for me, I've definitely had to show up in spaces very differently. And it also relates to with being queer, like being both and not knowing exactly when to say something and when to not say something, when to be quiet. I've felt this weird kind of like uh how do I acknowledge all of the complexities of of an issue, a peace and justice issue, in ways that'll affect me differently than how it will affect someone else? So that definitely comes up in the work a lot for me.
And I remember when we prepared for this conversation, you talked about how there's a defining moment that sort of changed and empowered you. Was it when you were in college and you joined a
Yes.
specific community or?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the most powerful part about it, where I kind of broke free from all of this because I ended up joining communities where I was told, like, let's talk about these things. Let's acknowledge the elephant in the room. And I joined a all Black dormitory my freshman year at the University of Arizona. So I've never been around so many Black people in my life. I was like, I've never even known how to present or to talk about being Black. And because of that moment, I really gained a lot of friendships and learned that the work that I'm doing, I can bring my whole self into it every day. And that's been something that's been really, really powerful for me. And then later on, I worked for Equality Arizona, which is a queer advocacy group in Phoenix. And that changed my life even further. Like I can bring every part of myself into the peace and justice space. And that was it was very life-changing.
That's such a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing that, Shelby. And Betty, have you had to show up differently or not? And in the work that you do as an activist, as a peace builder, how has this affected you?
Yeah, it's a very complex question. But even before I want to say that, I want to call into the space a woman named Mary Zepernick, who was a very significant person in my life, and the president of U.S. Section WILPF. And it's how I became a part of WILPF back then. And there are other women that I want to call into the space too, but I'm so bad at remembering names. I think Blanche and Clara will know who they are, these wonderful women that worked at the UN, who are iconics and wonderful. And they're just not here anymore, but in spirit they are here. And I think in some quiet way are inspirations for this revival of WILPF that this meeting and Robin has been so beautifully engaged in. So thank you, Robin, for that. Race. My experience, I think probably because I'm so old, Shelby, is very different from yours. It's quite inspiring to hear how you have navigated this vicious idea of race. I grew up in a very rural town in Ohio, and I grew up at a time when the Second World War was happening, 1942, and my grandparents immigrated to Ohio to work in the brick mills. And there were a lot of people migrating to this town for work, and many of them were Europeans. And we all grew up in company housing, a kind of socialist system where workers were cared for and housed. It was diverse. It was before the time of we didn't talk about diversity, but it was diverse in the sense that there were a lot of people who were from very different cultures and even countries. So I didn't grow up with the language of being different because of the color of my skin. We were all different in some way. And what was important was how people treated each other. What was valued and what distinguished you was not your culture so much as your capacity for being kind, for being generous, for being caring, for being relational, essentially. So that kind of world was the world I was born into and nurtured by. It wasn't until those Europeans who lived in those company houses became more mobile and integrated into the United States that they became white. But when I was essentially related to them, they were Italians and Spanish people and Portuguese people and English people. So when my first encounter was with really were that, they were people. They later became white people, but originally they were other kinds of cultures. Anyway, so that community that I grew up in was very intact around who they were, and I didn't feel, and so there was a very intact Black community, and people didn't call themselves Black then, but they were Negroes, colored people, and we were. We weren't under threat. I never felt threatened, and I never felt unsafe. And I grew up feeling really beloved, and kind of, the message was, you are beloved and you can be anybody you want to be. It was that kind of special time in this country, in a rural town in Ohio. It wasn't until I went away to university, Ohio State University, in fact, where I encountered discrimination and racism in the shape of being not allowed to go into places. And then, I became kind of active in a movement to expose the segregation off campus and housing, in a housing kind of way. But I did it with a bunch of other people who weren't brown people. They were all kinds of people that were organizing to prevent or to end this kind of discrimination. So I never felt exceptional because of my color. It took me a long time growing up. In fact, WILPF became a place where I really began to learn about oppression and various kinds of discrimination, racism, sexism, homophobia, classism, all of those troubled ways of harming people. WILPF was a radical educator for me in that way. I taught in the public schools in Berkeley, California, and I moved there to teach at a time when Berkeley was taking on busing as a way of integrating its schools. And it was very contentious and unskillful. The whole process was done unskillfully. And I ended up leaving the country, actually, and going to Europe and living for 15 years because I just could not deal with the situation that people, I felt, caught between taking sides around how we would conduct ourselves in this kind of difficult time of integrating schools. It was very painful and conflictive, and I decided to opt out and went to Europe, where I could be myself again, whoever that self was, but she certainly wasn't defined by the color of her skin. So my experience is so different from yours, Shelby, and I'm quite impressed the way in which you've navigated it.
And Betty, I remember you said, though, when you came back from Europe, am I remembering this wrong? You kind of really doubled down. You realized, wow, I stepped away from this, but it's still here.
That's right. That's exactly right. But it wasn't a part of my growing up. It was really a part of my coming of age. When I came back from Europe, and my daughter was called a nigger on the school bus on her, I don't know, 4th day of school on the school bus when she was 6. And she came home and said, "Mommy, what's a nigger?" And I realized that I had left California at a time when I couldn't really deal with this kind of activism. And I had come back, and boy, it was time. It was time to get involved. And that's really when Mary Zephanick came into my life. And my way of getting involved was to find other people and not just other Black people, but other people, other human beings who felt the kind of brokenness around our culture, around race, and wanted to do something about it. And not so much about punishing people, but more about being curious and interested in the causes and conditions that create this kind of harm, both in the way people think about other people, but also in the way they think about themselves. Yeah,
Thank you.
it's true.
Thank you, Betty. So I'd like to ask both of you, what's the biggest issue on your mind right now in the times we're in the moment we're in?
Well, for me, when I speak of when I talk about my experience as a kid or child, I didn't know that I I didn't know the power of seeing someone like me in a position of power or as a teacher or as an instructor. And what I'm really scared of right now is the censorship that we're seeing around conversations like that. The same spaces that really liberated me, like Equality Arizona, where I worked at, funding is scarce. Like we can't do that kind of work. It's not the same. And then also similarly to the University of Arizona, which I attended, I don't know if anyone saw like yesterday, but there's like a new letter of demands that have been given to them from this current administration to really pedal back on DEI, to pedal back on the same things I received as a student when it came to having like a Black dorm, having African American student affairs, having queer spaces, having women of color spaces. There's a lot of pressure to remove those things entirely. And when I think about what I'm concerned about, I love school. And I think kiddos spend 8 hours a day in a school. They need to make sure that that school is able to show faces and to show different people, cultures, so that they not only learn education, but they also learn how to be well-rounded people. And that is where I find I'm really scared for this next generation of folks who are parents and kiddos who won't be able to have just those conversations the same way anymore. So that's something that's really, really that I'm really nervous about.
Thank you, Shelby. And Betty, what's the biggest thing on your mind right now?
I think it's all connected. I think the way in which we have lived is shattering. There's a collapse going on, and it's for good reason. And it's not anymore just about human beings. It's about the earth. It's about all beings. Even I think human beings have brought us to the place where the whole world is now being threatened, the future. And so I think we have to build a vision about how we can live together. Not all beings can be on this planet. So the environmental issues are key, but they're all connected to the human issues, and those are connected to the environmental issues. And at the bottom line is that human beings really need to find each other, and we need to build communities of resistance, but also a vision, and all of it's on the plate. We can't just look at one group of humans anymore, or one set of beings anymore, or the trees. We're all connected. I mean, that's the whole point of this shattering that we're in, is that we haven't known the essentialness of all the parts. And so I'm wanting to be involved in communities of people and others, to create a vision and be a part of that vision of bringing to fruition a sense of connectedness and promoting that.
Wow. See what I mean about the wise Buddha? I mean, I just got this feeling course through me or over me, such like grace and calm and big picture as I heard your words, Betty. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your advice. I consider that advice. I want to say thank you both so much for giving us your time, sharing your stories, which are so personal. I'm so grateful for, because we're starting to run short for time. Um, I would normally ask you, what's a piece of advice you want to share with each other or with the people in this room. So rather than turning that into sort of another conversation because we are running short, maybe do you have sort of like some key words that you want to share with us that you want to encourage us to keep in mind as we move forward in these times, connecting us all together? Yeah.
Well, I think Betty and I, when we met a couple of weeks ago, I think one of the things that came for both of us was that there are so many ways to be an activist, and you just have to find like your key to your lock, I guess. There are so many ways to be involved in this work. As we're in this time, like safety is a big priority for all of us. I want all of us to be safe while we do the work that we're doing. And we are always advancing and finding new ways to be activists. We can always find a new way to do this work. So there's so many paths you can go down. Find what works best for you, and that's all.
Oh my gosh, Shelby, such wisdom. Yeah, we've talked before about, you don't have you can be on the street, you can be helping your neighbor. That's care. That's resistance through care. It's yeah, find what works for you. Yeah. Betty, any other words before I move
I
us
would
on to the
say
next?
cultivate generosity everywhere you go. Cultivate generosity. Find something to be grateful for, because there is so much of it in the world. And love each other. Love each other.
Oh, thank you both so much. I'm sure I could keep you here for an hour and everybody would be just captivated the entire time. But I did promise to try to keep us on time. Thank you for your grace, for your wisdom, for being with WILPF, for being with us. Um, I'm going to invite Shelby to unpin you both. And we're going to move on to our final pair that I'm going to interview. Um, I said they're just amazing women in this room, and I wish I could interview you all. But today, the next people I'm going to bring up are Ellen Thomas and Margaret Engel. And I know you're starting to pin us, Shelby. While you're doing that, I'm actually going to try to share a photo. And I know we tested this yesterday, so I'm pretty sure it will work. Um, but this is part of my setup to introduce Ellen. So Ellen is a warrior, lived in front of the White House. Um, I can't remember the number of years, Ellen. I'll have to ask you when I interview you, for a number of years. I think maybe 20, as part of the longest running vigil in US history to protest war. Um, and I did a quick Google search, and actually, I know you shared some photos with me, but and it's actually, interestingly enough, this vigil has been in the headlines lately because a senator made a move to tear it down, and then the current president actually tore it down. But just let me find this image here. And Ellen, you are currently in North Carolina, and Margaret, remind me where you're based today.
Today I'm in Buffalo, New York.
Okay. Here we go. All right. So I'm going to share my screen. Just want to sort of bring you to the moment, bring you to the place and space. So I don't know when this was, Ellen. I'll let you tell us. But this is part of the vigil and the space where Ellen lived for 20 years, right in front of the White House. I remember you said you used to like go to a friend's apartment down the street to shower, to eat, or people brought you food, but you were so committed to stopping war that you physically made your presence permanent in front of the White House, in front of where the ultimate decision makers are in this country. And I know many people were with you as part of that story. So I wanted to give everyone a place and space to come together in your journey. So I'm going to stop sharing this image. I'm going to assume that all of us are still pinned. And with that said, that's part of my introduction of Ellen Thomas, our warrior activist, one of our OGs, originals at WILPF, and has been so committed. You're a leader in this space. Whenever I talk to anybody in the anti-war, anti-nuclear space, especially, everyone knows Ellen Thomas. Ellen is responsible for trying to move forward really important legislation to prevent nuclear armament. And I know, Ellen, you were just in Hiroshima actually for the 80th anniversary of the bombings there. So I'm going to get into that a little bit more with you. And Margaret, I'm so excited to introduce part of Young WILPF US, part of Young WILPF International, works for for WILPF US 4 hours a week. I'm fundraising to try to hire you more. Margaret is this amazing human that I'm so grateful that I've connected with you, Margaret. You have been in this fight against nuclear war for many years now, and at such a young age. I'm so enraptured by this story and how you got involved. And you also work for Peace Action New York State, mobilizing young people to peace build, to stop armament in this world. So I'm closing our sort of fireside chats with both of you because you're so involved in opposing nuclear war, which is what WILPF's roots are, in preventing war when we were created, war of all forms. So let me ask you both, why did you get involved in opposing nuclear war in particular?
Margaret, why don't you start? I've been asking myself that
Hey,
question.
yeah, I, like many other people, I think started in anti-war and then sort of stumbled into opposing nuclear war as we learned more about it. And I didn't really learn enough about it until I went to college, and I went to Hofstra University on Long Island. And through my program, was introduced to these incredible people who had been involved in the New York peace movement for forever. Like, I had so many wonderful mentors there, and they really paved the way for me to learn more about nuclear war. And I felt like in those years where I was in college, I was unlearning so much of what I was taught in high school about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, about the military, about just nuclear proliferation in general. And I found it so interesting and horrifying at the same time, but also learning through those mentors and then going on to work with Peace Action. I also learned about the anti-nuclear movement and how incredibly powerful it is and how many wonderful people are involved in it, and all of the different steps that we can take to disarm. And so I'm so happy that I stumbled into it.
Well, I am delighted that you stumbled into it, and you're just exactly what we need. We're kind of aging out, some of us.
Well, to that point, Ellen, before you share your story, I wanted to give everyone context as to why this is still such a big issue. I said to Margaret, hit me up with some statistics that I can share to give people context, because it's almost like a given in the world we live in now, but we don't really know, like, what's the stuff? What is out there? So, Margaret did research and shared with me that there are over 12,000 nuclear weapons in the world. 9 countries with nuclear weapons and 22 countries with weapons usable nuclear materials that are vulnerable to theft. The 9 officially armed nuclear states spend approximately 100 billion last year on their nuclear weapons, an 11% increase from the previous year. So in a time when we're trying to disarm and not define peace as militarization, but as all the other things we've been talking about, healthcare, inclusion, access, all of these things, the world is actually investing more in nuclear. There's currently an effort, there's something called the Sentinel Project in the US to upgrade intercontinental ballistic missiles, $140 billion project that barely anybody knows about. Imagine what $140 billion could buy: housing, school, healthcare. So just wanted to give you some context as to why this is still relevant. And then segue to you, Ellen. You know, I would probably argue we're even more militarized and more nuclear than we ever were before. But why did you get involved? When did you get involved and why?
Well, I don't think we're more militarized than we were before, and we got up to over 50,000 nuclear weapons at one point
Oh, wow.
around the world. The United States had a hefty share of that. I got involved, actually, I got involved when I was 6 years old, and I was growing up in California, and in first grade, they had us duck and cover. And I asked the teacher why we had to go below our desks and put our hands across the back of our neck. And she said, well, we don't want glass to cut you if there's a bomb that goes off. But my parents took Life magazine, and I had seen pictures of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And so that didn't make sense to me at all. And when I had my first child, um, back in 1966, I remember sitting next to her crib and weeping at the thought of nuclear war. And that was a time when we were at war in Vietnam. We've been at war for so long in so many different places. The United States made such bad choices when it came to how to behave after World War II. And so I was living in Minnesota in 1982 when I was the nuclear freeze campaign came to a head in New York City, and so many people showed up and marched to freeze nuclear weapons. And I remember thinking that freezing just doesn't go far enough. And I went to a rally in the stadium in Minneapolis, and where the senator was joining Women Against Military Madness to talk about the nuclear freeze. And there were about 200 people in this stadium for thousands. And I remember thinking, well, Minnesota is not the place to work on this, but I definitely have to start working on this. And so I moved to Washington, D.C. with my daughter, and she announced she was moving out in 1984. And about that time, I was walking through Lafayette Park in front of the White House. I was in the midst of interviewing homeless people. I was really surprised to see all the homeless people, because in Minnesota, they kind of hide them because it's so cold. But and so I noticed a sign that said, Mr. President, why don't you come out with the forced homeless? And then over here was this huge mushroom cloud with the words, Revelation, this need not be our end. And I stopped to talk to the woman who was lying on the ground, the cold ground, on March 18th, 1984, Concepcion Picciotto. She said she had been there 3 years, day and night. And she said, I asked her if she was alone. She said, no, she had a friend. He was a philosopher. His name was Thomas. So I came back the next day and met this philosopher. And 6 weeks later, we were married. I gave everything I owned to my daughter and joined the vigil. And I was outside in front of the White House day and night for 15 years, and daytimes for 3 years. William Thomas was his name, and he called himself Doubting Thomas. And his mother died and left us some money, and so we bought a derelict building 10 blocks from the White House and fixed it up and turned it into the Peace House. And in 2002, I left the park, but I was in the Peace House supporting the vigil and also supporting people who came to DC to protest, and also supporting homeless people out the front door, feeding people. And the reason that I did this was because I want to leave the world a safer place for the children.
Wow.
That's the answer to the question.
So beautiful. Thank you, Ellen. And as I said to you yesterday when I was chatting with you, I'm sorry that the vigil was torn down, but I mean, after
It's still
40 years,
there.
but you
It's
said
just
it's still
people.
there. Yeah,
It's
just
people.
people.
It's yeah. The
The tent
signs
is
are
gone.
not there, but the people are. So
Yeah,
if you
they're still committed.
if you do Facebook and you go to William Thomas Memorial or Thomas Memorial, the vigilers are posting photographs of what's going on there. So
Wow.
you can keep up with what's happening there.
That's amazing. The people are still persevering.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have two more questions for you both. I know you've both been to Hiroshima and also possibly Nagasaki. And as I said earlier, it's the 80th anniversary of that bombing. And just to put us in place in space, um, I had this amazing opportunity to meet Ellen for breakfast in person in August. And I said to Ellen, I think this idea of nuclear war and what can happen as a result of it is so scary that it's almost unfathomable. I personally didn't get it until I actually went to Hiroshima and I saw the skeletal structures and I went to the museum and was deployed with the Red Cross after a nuclear disaster in much more recent history. And I'm going to share some statistics from Hiroshima and Nagasaki that Margaret shared with me. By the end of 1945, the bombings had killed an estimated 214,000 people, including 38,000 children. And many people after have had, many survivors have had multi-generational health issues, cancer, other side effects. And of course, at the time of the incidents, so many healthcare givers, physicians, nurses, they were killed or injured. 42 of 45 hospitals were non-functional at that time. All of which is to say, it's easy to forget history with so much happening in the world. It's easy to forget this threat still exists. And I actually know so many of WILPF women, some of you in this room have said to me your concerns about the world forgetting of this danger exists. Many of you said to me when I was little, just like you said, Ellen, we did like drills where we rolled under the desk, put our hands above our head. The kids don't do that anymore. Unfortunately, they're doing other kinds of drills, that speak to more immediate maybe harms. But this issue feels almost like not invisible, but not a priority in people's minds anymore. So I want to ask both of you, what is the biggest nuclear issue today that you want people to know about?
Margaret, you want to go?
That's a really good question. I think that in terms of talking about Americans and people my age who have gotten a similar education about nuclear weapons, I think that so many people have no idea about the concept of downwinders in America. And for anyone who doesn't know what a downwinder is, it is someone who generally has been affected by nuclear weapons, whether it's testing, uranium mining, etc. And there's a large community of downwinders in the United States, many who are based in the Southwest, Arizona, New Mexico, and many of whom are indigenous communities who were affected by the Trinity test, but also continued uranium mining. And just like those survivors in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they also have these multi-generational cancer issues. And they're so often neglected. And I think that this issue of indigenous rights in America, climate justice, and nuclear weapons are so perfectly interwoven in this perfect storm of serious injustice. And I wish that more people knew about them and knew testimonies of these American downwinders. So I think that's something that's really overlooked.
Wow, Margaret, that was powerful. Thank you for informing us and educating us. Yeah. Ellen,
I think the worst thing is the fact that the media doesn't cover these issues, and they don't make us they don't help us realize the dangers of nuclear weapons, nuclear power. Every nuclear power plant is producing weapons grade material, and and of course the biggest danger is politics and the people who want to manipulate public opinion so that they can get what they want and they can make money. The military industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us about so many years ago is going so strong right now. They're making weapons for Israel and weapons for Ukraine, and they're glad to get rid of their weapons so they can make new weapons for the United States. And you mentioned this Sentinel. The cost of this is just going through the roof because they want to make land-based, in silo, new nuclear weapons that don't fit into the old silos. So they're spending the money to dig more holes in the ground, which can then be targeted because everybody knows where they are. Everybody who has spies somewhere knows where they are. Others are saying, well, let's put them on trains or on trucks and drive them around. And yeah, that's a great idea. What about accidents? We have there, it's insanity. And I do find it a tiny bit hopeful that Donald Trump doesn't like nuclear weapons because, they're bad for business. And if you bomb somebody, then you can't build a resort there, right? So I'm hopeful that people will reach out to their Republican representatives and senators as well as the Democrats. For years, we've been reaching out to the Democrats and just ignoring the Republicans because we knew that they wouldn't do anything. But I think at this point, maybe there might be some reason in some people's minds about this issue. But on other issues, it's insane. And what really concerns me the most right now is what's going on in Gaza. This is so horrifying, and I feel so helpless.
Yeah.
I don't think standing in front of the White House is going to do me any good, doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Ellen. I feel you. I'm with you. I imagine many of us in this room feel that way about what's happening in Gaza right now. It's so intersectional. It's war. It's gender. It's environmental degradation. It's human rights. It's all those things. A little bit later, as we start to wrap up, I'll start to talk a little bit about WILPF is going to do in that space, because we need everybody doing something, and so WILPF is going to do something too. Thank you for sharing what's on your mind, Ellen. It's a lot.
I would like, may I take just 1 minute to
Yes.
give my pitch on Proposition 1?
Yes.
And where you can find more information. You mentioned that we work on legislation. In 1993, the Vigilers brought a voter initiative in Washington, D.C., which was successful. And as a result, Eleanor Holmes Norton from D.C. has introduced a bill every session. At that time, it was the Nuclear Disarmament and Economic Conversion Act. Now it's the Nuclear Weapons Abolition and Conversion Act. In between, there was a Nuclear Weapons Abolition and Energy and Conversion Act. But what basically it's saying is, since the TPNW, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, was was approved at the United Nations in 2017, the bill has included the language asking the president to sign the TPNW and for the U.S. to join in with other nuclear powers in abolishing all nuclear weapons and in earmarking the money that's saved, the billions of dollars, trillions of dollars, to earmark that for carbon-free, nuclear-free energy, environmental restoration, healthcare, education, human needs. And Warheads to Windmills is a coalition that has come about since 2017, led by Tim Wallace and Vicki Elson in Massachusetts. And there are lots of organizations and people who are signing on to this idea. And the idea is that it's twofold. Climate change and nuclear disarmament are interconnected. And the money is available if we get rid of the nukes. So, since I left DC in 2009 after Thomas died and came to be with my mother in the mountains of North Carolina until she died and decided to stay here. And long before that, actually, since 1998, I've been doing something online called Nuke News, Nucnews, because when I started my vigil in front of the White House, all I knew was that I didn't like nuclear weapons and I wanted to get rid of them. But when people came to argue with me, I didn't know what to say. So I started educating myself, and then I used that platform to educate others. And now I use the internet to educate others. And so if you would like to keep up with what's going on in the nuclear weapons and energy and waste world, I invite you not only go to NUCNEWS on Facebook, but also there's a Google group where you can get emails mostly on weekdays with links to articles that I collect because people know what I'm doing, and so they send me an incredible amount of information, and I try to go through it and share it with other people.
Thank you, Ellen. I'm smiling because like you're there right here. You're taking over this meeting and you're making it about activating around nuclear, and I respect that so much. Thank you for your passion. I love it, and I'm grateful that we had breakfast together and are in this together. So I'm gonna both ask you the same question I asked everyone else to close this portion before I start to wrap us up and move us to Q&A. What advice do you have for each other or for us? In a few short words. In these times we're here to hear voices of resilience, to lift each other up. What advice do you have for us? I'll go to Ellen first. Sorry. Go, Margaret. Well,
I'm just gonna say, like, I have said this before, but I can't imagine like giving Ellen advice because you know so much about nuclear weapons and nuclear weapons organizing. But I mean, all that to say, please, I know that you've been doing it for so long, but please keep doing it because it's so valuable to people. And again, like there's so many people who don't know about these issues. And I think for anyone on the chat, as Ellen was saying, so much of this information is hidden from media and from education, but it is out there. And thank God for the internet because, you can learn about this stuff. I've been contributing to a magazine called Nuclear Times that we're trying to revamp, that was alive in the 80s, that is going to have like a lot of great information to share. So just keep learning and staying in touch because these nuclear weapons issues don't stop, and it didn't stop with Hiroshima. So thank you so much for having me.
And I'm going to come back to you, Margaret, with one more question because you said something to me when we did a prep for this, and I want you to put it out there to the world right now. But Ellen, any other sort of short words of advice for everyone?
Well, we need to reach out to the young people, and I'm so thrilled that you have arranged this, Linda, because I'm delighted to meet Margaret and I'm delighted to meet Shelby, and I'm sort of isolated here in my little town of Tryon, so I'm not meeting a whole lot of young people. But I think that what is needed is for me to somehow connect with with young people working on issues that are related to what I'm working on and help them with what they're doing. And in the process, just, drop a few seeds and see whether they grow. But you beautiful women are doing amazing stuff. And I hope that we older women and you younger women can come together and really get to know each other and learn from each other and help each other. That is what I'm praying will come out of this. I love WILPF because I joined WILPF in 2004 thanks to Carol Erner turning me on to it, and WILPF is so supportive in so many different areas. When I wanted to travel around the country and talk to the WILPF branches, people helped me do that, and um, having things going on right now the way they are, we have Robin Lloyd to thank to a large degree for what she has done to help us out. And so I think we need to do outreach. We need to get to know each other, and
Right.
we can work together.
Thank you, Ellen. You just leaned into, as we start to wrap, where I'm going to start to talk a little bit about the future of WILPF, and you just set the stage perfectly. Um, it, our future is cross-generational, intergenerational mobilization, showing up together across the generations. That's the real power. And that's what we're going to do moving forward. I'm going to tell you all a little bit about that and then really wrap us up. But Margaret, I know you're on the go, so thank you for staying with us. I wanted to lean into one more thing. When I first spoke to you about this event, I said, what advice do you have? And you said the word joy. So tell me about that.
Yes, and I'm sorry to be on the go. But I something that I had said to Alan and Linda before this was that I cannot believe when getting involved in anti-nuclear organizing how much joy and laughter and amazing moments there are between these organizers, especially going to Japan and meeting Hibakusha and meeting people who have been doing this work for so long. How unbelievably funny they are is like, it just uplifts me so much, and it really fuels my work. And I just think that that's a really important part of peace organizing. So yeah, thank you for asking that follow-up question.
Thank you, Margaret. I know you have to run. Thank you. So if you have to drop off, no problem. And thank you, Ellen. I'm so grateful for your stories and for fighting the fight and inspiring us all. I am going to invite Shelby to unpin. Yeah, thanks, Shelby. And I'm going to start to wind us down. I wanted to close with Margaret's comments because um, she had to say it really quickly because she was on the go. But when we spoke to prep for today, she talked about how important it was for her and her community to always make room for joy, to always make room for laughter. I've heard people say, some people say, how can we be laughing at this moment? There's so much hardship and heartache. Um, but, Margaret said to me, the actual act of joy is resistance in itself. We have to nourish ourselves and we have to make that a part of our work because the work is hard. So I just want to, on her behalf, share that advice, really, really lean into that. I want that for all of us while we're doing our work. Both things can exist at the same time. I promised that we'd close the formal program 22 minutes ago, so I'm sorry we're running late, but there was so much wisdom being dropped in this room. I didn't want to cut anyone off. So I'm going to take maybe 5 minutes to tell you a little bit about how WILPF is responding to the moment that we're in. And then I'll leave 5 minutes for some open Q&A. And for those who have to drop right at the 90-minute mark, I get it. We have busy lives, and for those who can stay on a few minutes longer, I'll keep the Zoom room open. But wanted to share that in response to this moment, very grateful thank you to Robin Lloyd and the Legacy Fund that she's created to help transform WILPF to meet the moment we're in and be sustainable for the future. The world has changed a lot since WILPF was founded 110 years ago. So we're creating new ways and spaces to meet people where they are and mobilize differently together. So a couple of things that we're working on is in the new year, we're going to launch something called the School of Peace and Freedom. Something like this, where we're mobilizing together across generations to teach each other and learn from each other on how to mobilize collectively on issues we care about together. So more to come on that. Later in the year, next year, we're currently starting to organize and plan for something called the People's Tribunal on Gaza and Palestine. In the absence of accountability, we'll be working with partners like Veterans for Peace and others across the country to have a People's Tribunal, a grand jury that the people organize, where we bring in expert witnesses, legal experts, others, and hold the administration accountable for its complicity in the current genocide that's happening in Gaza and other actors. So stay tuned for that and how you can get involved. And finally, what I'll say is we did a survey of WILPF women, of WILPF members across the country and said, what are the things you want to mobilize around right now and in the next 2 years? And the number one thing that came up, well, the top three things were Gaza, ICE, and pushing back against the harmful tide that is happening right now in this country and the policies that are happening. And this idea that the current administration is redefining peace as militarization. But peace is so many other things. It's not militarization. And we want to push back against that narrative. And so I'm going to take the next 60 minutes to share some visuals with you about a campaign that we're launching on Monday. You will all receive the toolkit. You're welcome to use it or not, called Peace Is and Peace Is Not. And I want to give a shout out to an amazing human named Victoria Cole, who is a designer and volunteered her time to create a lot of the tools that I'm going to share with you today. Again, I'm only going to share highlights with you because we are short for time. But again, this is a campaign that we're moving forward to push back and reclaim the narrative about what peace is, because peace is not war. So I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to share sound. Okay. All right. So that was a really sort of sneak peek at some of the tools we're creating. There'll be a lot of like poster sets and flyers and things like that we're going to be designs that you can print locally and use at protests, use in your neighborhood, however you want. And behind those powerful images and videos will be fact sheets and backgrounders around very specific policies that have been implemented that are enabling these harms, the impact, how it's impacted communities, and equally important ways that people can take action. That was so important for us as we built up this campaign because we know people are feeling powerless. So we built in tips and tricks on how people can take action beyond a protest, beyond calling a senator, taking part in Know Your Rights trainings, helping a neighbor in distress, all the different ways. We are launching this campaign on Monday. We'll be sharing it with all of you, and we invite you to share it with your allies and use the tools however you want. We just wanted to put something out there to empower and equip you to use your voice, to rise and be resilient. And so with that said, I want to send grateful thanks to every single panelist who spoke today. Thank you for your wisdom. To every one of you who took part in today's event by donating, by joining us today. We are grateful for your support. We have so much work to do together. And because we're doing it together, I feel better. Thank you for being present with WILPF and in the community that we share. And with that said, this is the formal close of our formal presentation. And if you can take me off pin, Shelby, I will open it up for 5 minutes of questions if anybody has questions. And also, if our panelist has overwhelmed you with wisdom and you're simply processing and thinking through and you don't have questions, that's okay too. Taking time to process wisdom is, that's important too. So I'll take 5 minutes. If anybody has any questions, please put up your hand and I'll invite you to speak. And if not, we can just bask in each other's beautiful company. Nope, but there are definitely questions. I saw Eileen's hand and then Cheryl's hand.
Okay, I'm muted now. Thank you so much. It's been a true pleasure to listen to these stories, a true pleasure for the emotions that you bring forth and the hope that has come through this for me. And it so happens Boston WILPF is having a speaker, actually 2 speakers, a rabbi and a minister, Reverend who recently retired, talking about their success in challenging ICE in Burlington, Massachusetts. There's been rallies up there that are bringing in 300, 400, 500 people, many ages, much creativity with signs. I hope you can join us. The message will go out in a branch notification soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. I love it. Let's share with each other what's working. That's what we're here for, right? To learn from each other. Cheryl.
Yes, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed the past hour and a half. I attend many other organizations' meetings by Zoom that we are in coalition with. So tomorrow, for example, I will be meeting with a whole bunch of arms control and anti-nuclear weapons organizations who are looking to work on a follow-on to the New START treaty. And when I go to these meetings, I'm always trying to put into the chat, where to go to get WILPF materials or what is WILPF doing. I put it in the chat. So this lovely toolkit that you showed us a little bit of just now, will there be kind of a place on the WILPF website that I can point people to by putting a URL in the chat? When I'm in these meetings, especially tomorrow, I'm going to be with a whole bunch of, like the head of Peace Action and the head of Veterans for Peace and the head of World Beyond Well. So is there going to be a nice straightforward way of getting to the toolkit? Thank you.
So, well, thank you, Cheryl. So the answer is yes, but yes on Monday. Tomorrow is Sunday.
Monday.
Let Shelby and I are going to take the weekend to finalize everything and do that exactly, and work with Glenn to post it. So on Monday it will be available. And we want WILPF members, WILPF branches to utilize these tools, and equally, we are committed to sharing them, to your point, with partners and allies and saying, this is here, use it how you want. Let's just do this together. It's got our logo. You want to put your logo on it too? That's okay. Like, show up with us. Let's show up with each other. So yes. Yeah.
Hi,
Yeah.
this is Judy Adams, who is on the Peace Worker name.
Hi, Judy.
Hi. And I just wanted to thank you for all that you're doing and suggest to branches, one of the main efforts I do for our branch is weekly silent, as our branch roots were in that mode. Vigils on a busy street corner in our hometown for the branch, which is Palo Alto, California. Get out there on the street, whether you're silent, whether you're not, with signs or not, with music or not, and get the word out. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for mobilizing, mobilizing us. I saw Ellen's hand, and then I saw Blanche's hand, and then I saw Shelby's hand, and then I think we're
Nope, I
going
was
to
just
start to
saying
wrap.
Ellen, then Blanche. I didn't want to speak.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay, Ellen, then Blanche, and then I'll make room for one more, and then we have to wrap. Ellen.
It's Ellen, right? Because WILPF is just teeming with Ellen these days. Well, I hate to find something that I think is really wonderful that everybody should do, because I hate people like that who say, "Oh, I found the answer to everything, and you all have to, eat this particular food, and then we'll overthrow fascism." But Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal is using her campaign organization, her reelection campaign, instead of campaigning, she's putting together these things called resistance labs. And there's one a month, and the next one is October 14th. And I attended the one last month, and it was amazing. First of all, it's free. There is no fund pitch. There is no link that says, here, contribute to my reelection campaign. Now, I did have to register, and I did get an email later saying, send money, please. But to attend the thing, no obligation. And it's about tools for resisting fascism. And it's not about join this organization, and it's not about do this thing. There are many things that can be done, and any of them will weaken the fascist government we have in place now. And while everybody is saying fascism these days, whereas up until yesterday it was authoritarian, sliding towards authoritarian, she's been saying fascism for a while. She's still ahead of the crowd. She's saying, here are techniques that have worked. You can think of others. Broke into small groups and discussed on any subject we wanted, on any of the various crises. What kind of things have we seen that have had any kind of effect in interfering with, not stopping or overturning or bringing about, but just interfering with? What's the equivalent these days of blowing up the railroad tracks that are taking the people to the death camps? What is the things we can do that are either writing a letter or blocking the street or whatever? What kind of things can we do, and what kind of groups are doing them, just to get us all connected and to know each other and to be able to be more effective in our work. And I put the link to signing up for the resistance labs in the chat, and I really, really, really recommend it.
Well, thank you, Ellen. I actually just opened the link when you were speaking. It looks great. I'm going to sign up, and let's share our tools with them, right? When we join these groups, let's share our toolkits with them. And I'm going to give the last word to Blanche, because you had your hand up last, and then I will really close, because I know we're running late. Blanche, did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, I just want to thank you, Linda Lowe, for reinvigorating, re-energizing, regrouping WILPF. We need WILPF now more than ever. Betty Burkes, you mentioned the great women of New York, Ruth Gage Colby, who was at the UN, our workers with WILPF, Anne Florent, some of the radical women of our history, Helen Kussman. And what some of us need to do, as an historian, some of us need to just highlight them and get them going. Crystal Eastman, the Women's Peace Party, she founded the ACLU. And Linda Lowe, you have brought us together. And all I want to do is thank everybody, especially the great women who spoke today, and Linda Lowe for bringing us all together and re-energizing and reinvigorating WILPF. Together forever, hearts open, fists high. Thank you.
Wow, Blanche, that is the best way to end our morning together. I like have shivers. Oh, that was so powerful. Thank you so much, you amazing, strong women, for all that you do. I am so excited to do such good things with you. Take care of yourselves so we can take care of each other. Enjoy your weekend.
Bless
Betty,
everybody.
going to be in Cambridge.